The city of Seoul, the nation of Estonia, the nation of Malta, on the cutting edge of blockchain evolution. But those of us who are not in government have a role to play as well. Because what blockchains bring is the challenges of governance, not just in the hands of government, but for each of us. Vlad Zamfir, Vitalik Buterin, Ralph Merkle, some of the biggest names in blockchain have said that governance is the single biggest challenge facing blockchain. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to give you an insight into the nature of that challenge, and I will equip you with some knowledge you will need when you enter that fight. The very first thing we have to be clear on is what is governance. Because when I first got involved in this blockchain space, governance was the thing I was attracted to, and I realized that our industry does not have a shared definition of the word. So I'm going to give you what I believe is the most precise and inclusive definition, and it's the most useful. Number one, governance is a system for making collective decisions. And the word collective is crucial. But it is not just the making of decisions, it is also the carrying out of those decisions, auditably, verifiably, and so forth. And thirdly, the very system of governance itself is a set of rules that you use governance to change. It is a self-amending system. Here's an example to help you anchor this. Let's say that a group of 20 people get together and they agree that they're going to share 5 large pizzas. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking there's no way 20 people are going to agree on anything like that. Well, let's pretend. After much wrangling, after much fighting and disagreeing, they finally agree. And you might think, hooray, governance. No, because we have just gotten past phase 1, agreement in principle to do something. Now comes the hard part. What's the actual order that we place with which restaurant? Who's going to pay? Who's placing the order? Who's going to pick it up? Do we have plates and napkins? What are we going to drink? And without all those underlying details, governance is a sham. And thirdly, of course, amending the rules. Next time we get together for dinner, maybe we'll choose a different approach to how we make this decision. When you research this, when you look into this for yourself, you'll find that the word governance is often used in the popular literature very narrowly. And you may be misled by this. If you read an article and it seems that when they say governance, they're talking about corporate governance, administration, reporting, they're actually drilling into step 2 from the prior slide. But you've got to have the full picture in your mind. Now here is a slide that I'm not here to have you memorize this, but you want to come back to this slide when it's your time to wrestle with governance. You need to have this slide handy because these 5 things will haunt you if you're not prepared for them. Number 1, the issue of principles and agents, a problem as old as mankind itself. Number 2, the distinction between unilateral action, cooperative action, unanimous action versus collective decision and action. A profoundly important distinction. The idea of information asymmetry, number 3. Number 4, contract incompleteness. A man named Dr. Simon Hart won the Nobel Prize for his discovery and articulation of the concept of contract incompleteness. And that was outside of the blockchain context, which means when you write a smart contract, you too must face the challenge that no contract can ever be complete. And of course, from 1937, Coase articulated the idea of friction and the concept of a firm. Why do we even have a firm instead of just a bunch of independent consultants or contractors? Because the blockchain redefines the concept of a firm. The future of practical blockchain is going to hinge on, I believe, consortia in the near term. So what is a consortium? A consortium is just a collective. Remember, I used the word collective earlier, very important word. It is a collective that has a limited purpose. It's made up of many organizations. It behaves as a single organization, and when you join, you must give up some of your rights in order to become a part of it. It then governs itself through a governance process. And when you have separate organizations and they try to work with each other, they have friction. Now, you know this from your business dealings. You know, where's my order? We sent you the order. Well, it's not here. Well, it says you signed for it. Well, I can't find it, so where's the order? And well, my system says I sent it. Your system says you never got it. Who's right? When you get into a consortium, you have a single source of truth that you all share, if it's a blockchain consortium, which means that the friction drops dramatically, but the work of setting this up is very, very significant. You may say, what are some examples of consortia? The NCAA Big Ten, basketball, Hulu, the provider of television entertainment, Alyeska, who created one of the world's most ambitious pipeline projects and runs it to this day, Airbus, all pre-blockchain, highly successful, very challenging consortium examples. Okay, so what's a consortium blockchain? Because remember, I told you, I promise you, this is what the next few years is going to hold. A consortium blockchain has 3 dimensions. You can ask, what kind of membership does it have? Is it open to the public or is it private? Number 2, is the usage inside that chain restricted or unrestricted? And number 3, how many governing stakeholders? Is it an autonomous chain like Bitcoin and Ethereum? Is it a top-down system like a hyperledger with one person controlling it? Or is there a small number, a consortium, running things? And so that governing stakeholder row, that bottom row, far right side, that is where the growth is going to be. We're going to see an explosion of economic productivity and innovation right there. Because when a consortium has a blockchain, they have a single source of truth, not just within the company, but within all the companies who are cooperating. This becomes an incredibly low friction way for them to do business with one another. And it becomes a gateway to entirely new business models. I'll give you an example of what this looks like. Zim they're a large shipping company based in Israel. And one of these big container ships, when it would leave port, it would take anywhere from a few days to a few weeks before they could notify people, oh yes, your product is on a particular ship, and it left on a certain day. And you might therefore be waiting for days or weeks to find out, where's my stuff and when's it gonna get here? And if you're not quite sure why that's important, think about this. You have a multi-million-dollar deal that's riding on a critical component coming to you on one of those containers, and you don't know if it's gonna be here on time. So you have a choice. You can wait and hope, or you can do a rush, expensive, last-minute order to replace those components in case they don't show up. But you don't want to spend the money if they will be here, but you have to spend the money if they won't, but they can't tell you where your stuff is. It's somewhere in between. We don't know exactly. We'll tell you in 2 weeks. You can't afford that. The savings estimated by Zim is in the billions of dollars per year, just for this one example. Now this is a part of our analysis at Strong Block that became very interesting. We asked, what is the work involved of setting up a consortium and governing that consortium versus what is the work of setting up and governing a blockchain? And again, this is one for you to look at your leisure, but line by line, point by point, they are almost identical. which means the work of setting up a consortium in the first place is all the same work of setting up a blockchain. Which means if you're going to do one, you might as well do both. You've already done all the work. And when you look at the data inside, again, this is a reference slide for you to read in detail later, but there's a set of information about blockchain governance, there's a set of information about your consortium governance, and then there's the data about your business processes that you have to unify and rationalize when you create this consortium. And that far right-hand side, by the way, is an enormous amount of work. Anybody in here set up a business consortium or is working in one now? I promise you that the technology is not the problem here. It's the politics, it's getting to agreement, and it's doing the systems integration work to unify disparate data definitions, business process definitions, and so forth to create that single shared understanding of what the truth is. Now there's some risks to consortia. Nothing in life is without risk. What if nobody joins your consortium? Maersk, another big shipping conglomerate, has spent millions of dollars working with IBM, excellent company, for many years to set up a shipping blockchain. And they've signed up 80 customers. Would you like to know how many of their shipping partners have joined them? At last report, 0. None of Maersk's business partners will join the Maersk blockchain. Why? After you spent millions of dollars, I think this is a good question. And the answer that I've heard in reading closely in the news is that these business partners have been told, yes, it's a blockchain, but Maersk will retain 100% control of all of the nodes, and they will decide what the truth is. And their competitors, their business partners are saying, no. No. We'll do one where we share that responsibility, where nobody is in an authoritarian controlling position. That's just one of the risks on this slide. And one other thing, I think, the challenge of not just decentralization, but to bring up peer-to-peer capabilities to a higher level was articulated years ago in the P2P Foundation website, p2pfoundation.net. What they found is that initiatives by neutral service providers lack liquidity, and initiatives by liquidity providers lack neutrality. And the only thing that breaks that paradox is blockchain. Now, again, this is a very detailed reference slide for you. I'll give you a quick view of it. On the left are all the aspects of governance, blockchain governance, consortium governance, that cannot be automated, or it's very hard to automate. And on the right-hand side are all the things that are relatively easy to automate. You may have been reading in the news, in the blockchain press, various debates, fights between people. Vitalik and I believe it was Gavin White. Left. No. It should be highly automated and stored in smart contracts. Well, that's the stuff on the right. What they didn't realize is they're like the blind men with the elephant, and one of them feels one part of the elephant, another one feels the other. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the whole elephant when it comes to governance. And it is a spectrum of what parts of it can be automated. And you're going to need to know that when it's your turn to engage in blockchain governance. Here's my conclusion. In the future, no consortium will form without its own blockchain. And I leave it to you to decide, would these consortium be forming in Malta or Estonia or Seoul? Thank you very much.